Hello, and welcome back to the Underground Podcast, brought to you by the Ghostly Connection. Today's episode will feature Matt Valente. As you will find out in today's episode, Matt Valente and the Underground go way back. In his many lives, Matt has been a preschool teacher, an Army PSYOPs officer, an artist, and something of a polymath. But don't tell him I said that. UV and Ghosts from 206 get into it with Matt about his unique artistic process, where to and where not to find the occult, how to check your own biases, and the place where Matt feels most comfortable. As always, this episode features Kareem's hard-hitting questions. Hit the subscribe button hard if you like this episode. Find the Ghostly Connection on Instagram at Ghostly Connection. Here's some air horns.
What's up? What's up? Welcome to The Underground, Volume 2.
The Underground.
With Matt Valente, artist, author, alchemist, ceremonial wizard. How you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing good. Thanks for inviting me on the show tonight.
Yep. It's going to be populating. So, I know you pretty well. Matt was my ex-roommate as of 3 months ago. So we had quite the experience. But for the people that don't know you, you give yourself like a little background on you and what you do.
So, the way I understand this today on the podcast, I'm going to be mostly talking about my art. I have a lot of facets about me, just like most people do.
Like a diamond.
Like a diamond or like a gem of some sort. But for my day job, I guess that's a good place to start off, even though this is a symptom of the capitalist system we work in. Mm-hmm. But I teach preschool right now, and I love that. That gives me a chance to really practice my art and teaching other people art every day. And before that, I was in the military for about 8 years. I was in the Army, and I created and produced propaganda. Yeah. As like the unsubtle way of saying what I did. I was in psychological operations. But so even in that, I mostly just drew pictures for the Army. So I've really been just kind of doing this my whole life. But now recently, my art has taken more of a spiritual bend to it, and I mostly focus on a lot of like ideas behind symbolism and Freemasonry and astrology and tarot and all that cool witchy stuff.
Look deep into the drawings on the Instagram, link in the description. Yeah. So, describe like is there any main one thing you want to convey with your art, or what inspires you to do a piece of art when you're doing it?
So, I'm not going to lie, I actually don't necessarily expect anyone to see my art. I don't really do a lot of it for other people. A lot of the art that I do, it's almost like I feel almost possessed by some sort of artistic spirit, and I feel the need to get some of these images out on paper. And then the finished result looks cool, and it's like I might as well not just let it rot in a sketchbook, so I let other people see it by posting it on the internet, or sometimes I do live painting, and people it's a live painting, right? That's for other people, but at the end of the day, I like to just go up there and I almost black out on stage. I don't really feel super present, and when I come to, it's like, there's a painting there. Ooh, cool.
Yeah, that's how I feel when I perform. It's like you forget everything that happened. You're just like, wow, I guess I did that. It was the same way when I was doing debate rounds, actually. So I would just totally forget everything.
Oh, what up, Kareem?
Today I feel like the black one, because we're just back in it, rolling on all wheels, doing it underground, hardly seen, but still moving. And I believe the person next to me is a man by Matt Valente, making Valente classics. Is that true?
That is correct, my friend Kareem. You are sitting next to Matt Valente. What was that last part there?
The Valente classic. How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, honestly. I've been having a nice, refreshing weekend. It's October, so I've been really into the Inktober event. That's where someone like does a drawing every day for the month of October.
Ooh, back at it again. So like, what day is it today?
It's the 4th. So I've done 3 drawings, and probably after the podcast I'll do another one when I go home.
Fresh.
And for this year, I started out with Edgar Allan Poe themed stuff because it's like spooky. You know Edgar Allan Poe, right?
Yeah, man. You're jumping right into the weirdo.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, come on now. Floorboards, man. Check them floorboards.
Yeah. The second
all I
one I
gotta say.
did was the Telltale Heart. So it's like some dude with a heart for a head, and he can hear it like dun 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 dun. I don't know. You got the link. You can check out.
Check it out in the description below.
You know, one of those. It's funny how you brought up Edgar Allan Poe. Man really is known for like having like the feeling, like damn near like a rapper. You know, like you can really kind of like feel the heart underneath.
Yeah,
the
he's like a
boards.
whole ass aesthetic. Like he's his own vibe.
All right, the question everybody's thinking: is there hidden occult symbolism in Edgar Allan Poe? What do you think?
Damn.
Hidden occult symbol. You know, despite Edgar Allan Poe being like a really spooky writer, I don't think he was an occultist, actually. I feel like he tapped into a lot more just like normal base fears. Any human could, like, he's just like entrapment. He did a lot of stuff about being like buried alive and stuff like that. And it's like, that's cool, but not everything spooky is occult, you know?
Yeah.
I
So
feel
what are
like-
the steps to tell if something is just trying to be spooky or there's actually something deeper to it?
Well, if I may say, I feel like the depth of what details that he would put in his art, if they became like so naturally etched into like how he was able to illustrate his truest feelings, we're not talking like technical occult, like the man really came with, you know, intention is the biggest one. When we talk symbols, his priority and focus was simply just not there, not in that capacity. He had a natural like human experience flow, you know, damn near like Twitter. But if you were, you know,
In the 1800s.
Yeah, I mean,
1800s.
like, poetry is similar to Twitter. It's,
Poetry.
yeah, poetry.
Edgar Allan poetry.
essentially, basically, it's like man did not come out and was like, you know, I'm gonna be an artist. It's more like he wanted to express himself, you know.
Well, I mean, back then they didn't have like synthesizers and Lando with the lube with the beats and stuff.
No,
So like
facts.
back then, like poetry was like as close as you could get to rap in a lot of ways. So you two very much share an art with Edgar Allan Poe, but it's like not all of your art speaks to like the occult.
What are the
Something-
signs if something has occult symbolism in it?
Really, you gotta learn a lot of those like occult stories, because they've got pretty simple stories and the symbols are there, like a snake winding up a staff, or like some of those archetypal things, like all of the different constellations and the number 7 popping up to explain really important things, because that's like the 7 planets that you can see from Earth, and you know,
the
there's, like,
tangibilities.
there's lots of little symbols that can pop up. Really, you just have to study occultism, and then it's almost like having your eyes open to certain things where you're like, oh, wait a minute, that sounds a lot like this thing.
Yeah, you'd be surprised, but call me savage for saying this, but I feel like due to the technicality of how natural Edgar Allan Poe was, you'd find more occultist, like, you know, symbology in Dr. Seuss than you realistically would Edgar Allan Poe, at least the person.
Like, that sounds crazy, but I actually agree with you on that. Like, Dr. Seuss, I feel like, has a lot more hidden messages in his art, especially because his art on the surface, especially like his children's books and stuff like that, is very much like in your face, totally a different story. It's about
Completely.
Yeah.
It's about turtles that are actually called blurtles, and it's like absurd. But then when you really
Delve deeper.
dive into the images, especially, you can see that this man has like a different kind of way of viewing
Let's break
the
it
world.
down. Let's break it down as an artist and as someone familiar with propaganda. if you know a Dr. Seuss story. Because I couldn't point one out, but if you know it, break it down for
the
listeners.
The one that came into my head, and I cannot confirm this like directly, was actually one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish.
Interesting.
Because every word kind of said, it's not even at all one of his like deeper books. And I heard the man even later on went and did psychedelic art, like on his own time.
Yeah, a lot of Dr. Seuss's personal art is like a lot
wildin',
like trippier, and has a lot of those like hallucinogenic kind of, especially for his day, because Dr. Seuss was making art like in the 30s and 40s.
Way before the boom.
Yeah, way before like psychedelics are a well-known thing.
Talking about the symbology of Dr. Seuss and why he was able to draw these psychedelic landscapes. Now, as a bit of a historian of psychedelia, you know a bit about where the influences were coming from in that time. Where do you think he would have been getting that psychedelic imagery from since the 60s hadn't happened? It's like Albert Hoffman hasn't synthesized LSD. We're way back.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't doing any form of LSD, just as far as the timeline. It wasn't invented yet, or if it was not public knowledge. So he wasn't doing that. I mean, like, magic mushrooms grow pretty much everywhere, like the psilocybin mushrooms. And so there's a possibility that he was doing some form of hallucinogenic mushroom.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, though. A lot of those images are really, like, interesting, like, vibrant landscapes that are just twisted, and he's got crazy animals that don't exist but maybe could.
Yeah.
He's a very imaginative artist, and one of the things that's interesting is that just because an artist does something that's like really trippy looking or imaginative doesn't necessarily mean they're on drugs.
Yeah.
Because like artists can kind of view the world in a different altered state of perception even without that input of like some sort of plant or chemical.
In the same way as we had just talked about, like things that look spooky or have like a presence or a feel or are kind of symbols that you would kind of check out, that you see, like you feel like it's some sort of pattern that means something. Does not always at all necessarily mean it's occult.
Yeah, it's like check your own biases sometimes. It's like sometimes you're seeing patterns and things because you're thinking about that thing a lot. Yeah. But it isn't always the case that the artist but that's also a good sign of good art, you know? Is that
you get something.
Other people are left to interpret it the way they want to. And so it allows, like, really good art doesn't hold your hand and say, this is what this art means. Yeah. It allows people to look at it and be like, oh, this confirms all of my deep conspiracy theories. You know?
Yeah, so let's bring it back to the original question then. What propaganda or ways of viewing the world do you see in a Dr. Seuss book? Like, what lens is that presenting?
Like, honestly, like I said, on the nose, the message of it is its intended purpose. They're trying to teach kids about different things, like how to share and how to not judge other people, and that's the reason why it's more of an occulted kind of message. Is you see the little symbols in the background of things, and I didn't come here with like a little folder of stuff.
For sure.
But maybe on my next trip, I'll get some stuff about Dr. Seuss and maybe present it. And we can have like a more fleshed out conversation about
Definitely.
that.
No, but like we have to think about how the man was able to illustrate his art, just as well as he was able to like be an author that you could really even see the picture as it was rolling through. Time period as well. Even back to the comparison with Edgar Allan Poe is just that Seuss was literally in that pre-war time. His comics were hitting the troops. Needed to, and those were some shitty times of his own, and his caliber of success was ironically kind of reflective of Edgar Allan Poe's failures. I mean, man was troubled. Intention too, it's still good, but more troubled. Definitely more to deal with.
We have one author that seemingly had occult symbolism, one without. What's been the history of occult symbolism in art for those that might not have seen it really? Like some artists, it's definitely there. Some artists, it's not is all art when you go back have that symbolism?
So for me, I really feel like when people look at art, they've got this period of time where people really enjoy looking at art because it's more modern, from when the impressionists start to make their stuff, and we start to see this like art turning into what is art, and you get into the more abstract postmodern concept of it.
Meta.
But right before that, you have a lot of artists who are just using their artistic talent and just building on a lot of these old stories and fables from like ancient Greece and Rome and other cultures. And all of those stories, once you look at the art, go, this is beautiful, what is this supposed to be about? You look deeper into the story and you read that art, and it's like, oh, well, that's also hiding something deeper. And you look deeper into that, and it just gets you down this rabbit hole. So you've got like Leonardo da Vinci is one of the people who really starts that out early on in the Renaissance. And the Renaissance in general, I mean, like, Renaissance means reawakening or something to that effect. So it's like you have like all these artists who are taking these old ideas that are being uncovered and then trying to introduce those to the people. But then you also have like a pretty oppressive church at the time, and they're trying to like burn people and kill people for not having ideas that line up with the church. So you have to hide or occult a lot of that information through like stories and art. So like, honestly, it's almost like there's a bunch of these stories that artists all were like, this is a scene from a story that needs to live on in people's history and in their minds and in their storytelling and all the symbolism. So even though some like 9 other artists have already done this exact same image, I'm also going to do it in case those ones get destroyed.
Yeah.
Kind
And
of thing.
it's like a stack on the energetic changes of not only the different individuals that choose to do that, kind of like follow that art culture. That art culture was already very magical based on even the first principle. And now you have 8 other different tangents of like the same thing, but completely different. And art had done that, and even new inventions as it still get a sense of the old energies. You kind of see things kind of get this tenure of occult.
Yeah, it's
and
like,
then it only recently, as it ever got more modern, turned meta and culture.
and it almost makes you feel a little crazy once you realize, like, one of the things that you can see all over the place, the god Pan and like the goats and stuff like that.
Goat symbology.
Like, Bacchanalia is a word that comes up a lot, and it's all you get really into it, and it's just like, why are all of these artists depicting this exact same scene over and over and over and over again? And you run around in circles just trying to figure it out sometimes. And
And
it's interesting.
The balance is honestly, like, we talked about an oppressive church system, and there's what is it, Sunday? It is Sunday. It's good old Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. I remember, it sounds wild, a Sunday when I was in jail, and that same Sunday, a whole Christian revival unit of like literally hundreds of people flooded the park of Cal Anderson over in Capitol Hill just to kind of like hang out and, spread the word of, Jesus Christ, I believe.
Coronavirus.
I mean, they're pretty much coronavirus because, you would think if they're all 6 feet apart, and that's hundreds of people.
There were apparently a couple.
Weren't they doing baptisms
They were
there?
doing, I walked
in
by
like
them.
a big trash
I
can.
thought they were doing like concert, but then it was all like it wasn't the normal people you'd see at a concert. Everyone looked like kind of too happy or whatever, and it's I knew it was something weird, but I didn't even find out it was a church organization until I don't know. I read the paper and they're doing baptisms, but
Then that Patriot Prayer, wasn't it?
I don't know. I never add like if people are holding an event. Unless it's really popping, I'm just like, you go, guys. Go.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's a political, but it's like...
I don't want to get sued for slander, saying a different group was there than was actually
Yeah,
there.
I honestly, based on the fact of me not even being there and like literally hearing the story of per se one of the wilder days that park's ever seen, and that's saying something.
Yeah, that was weird because it was like the day after they tear gassed and beat people for being in the park, and then they just let those guys chill for the whole day. And I mean, I don't know all the details.
One of that day, I was in jail for like 2 days for doing some like dumb shit, like with my friends and like trying to jack beer and it just did not go the right way. I'm just gonna spare the details. Like fast forward, I was in jail Saturday night, and so I was in jail all Sunday, got out Monday. But that Sunday, when all that happened, I had no knowledge the entire day, no contact with the outside world at all of anything going on outside of myself, dead ass. And the thing I was staring at that was only in my bunk cell, which I did not move from, was a giant 3-dimensional shaded detailed cross.
A crucifix.
Pretty much. With like literally penciled and shaded in with one of those like IKEA pencils. Like, man did not have like whatever. They had the time though. So me sleeping literally by this thing every night, I was incarcerated, not having any knowledge of like what even went on anywhere in the outside world. Then kind of coming back to it really had me thinking, like, when you go per se, like say I was at that park and I engaged with someone, you know, I'm a weirdo, you know, like shit, even look at the stuff I got on like right now. We're talking patterns on patterns, symbols on symbols.
The chic of fleek.
Essentially. Keep it meek. Thank you. And fellow geek, man, I would walk up to like any one of them, and the first thing I would honestly do would be like kind of check them for like what type of symbols I could really get explained by them. And shit, that would be a big one, would be the crucifix itself. And then you really would just kind of start there. Everything else, from what I heard, they came to spread not like the word of God, which does not involve conversation. It has to literally work through.
Yeah. It's like have faith that what we're saying is true. Don't look into it. Which is the complete opposite.
When you look deeper, what you see doesn't always align with the dot. That's why it's exoteric. The church is the exoteric. When you get into the esoteric, that's looking at non-literal meanings of these sacred texts.
Yeah, I'm not trying to rag on American Christians really, because a lot of American Christians are good people, and a lot of American Christians like the majority religion in this country. But I just don't think that all of the mainstream American Christians really fully grasp it, because the biggest esoteric piece of art ever made is the Bible.
Let alone the crucifix. And that is like, you gotta even really like find a way even to like get the deeper meanings of both separately and within the same confound. Because like if you look at your average like, you know, King James Bible, I don't believe there is a drawing of a crucifix.
I mean, yeah, there's no official illustrations to the Bible in any of the versions.
Really. So we're talking no symbols, just words. So like we're talking something devoid of what you would call in a base sense art. Yeah. Just word.
Well, unless you really break down and say every letter is a symbol.
But you know,
you look back to our letters though.
Exactly.
The original Bible, that's how they viewed it. They said every single letter is a symbol, and it's just like it breaks down into the words, but then it's like how each letter interacts with each other.
So for those unaware, it was all written in ancient Hebrew, which then corresponds to each tarot card in the tarot deck. So each arrangement of Hebrew letters represents a 22 major arcana, which represent greater concepts.
Like, among other things.
The
ancient Hebrew language was really well developed, if you believe everything people tell you.
Yeah.
Actually,
honestly. Let's talk about that a bit more. Skepticism in the occult path. What role do you think that needs to play?
It's very important to have an open mind and not believe all of the official, like, on the face, this is what this means. But at the same time, you get into, like, mainstream witchcraft especially, and mainstream astrology is big on this, where people can just say whatever the fuck they want, and it's kind of your job to figure out if it holds any merit or truth, or if it's just, like, this person's on their own, like it maybe has merit or truth for them, but they're on their whole own trip that's not historically in line with some of these greater concepts.
Yeah, and that's one of the bigger things is like, you can't instigate to get your way to these bigger concepts. the nature's curiosity
Yeah.
is going to kind of lead you to it.
And it's important to go down all those paths a lot of the times, even if they turn out to be dead ends and you were wrong. The fact that you went down and searched it, that's knowledge.
That's already
in
right
itself.
there. Boom. You know?
Then to even go back down and research it and be like, oh shit, there was actually another little thing here that I didn't see the last time, and that's still cool and fun.
Ties into the art too, because it's like when anyone does a symbol of the same thing that someone else has done, and it has that orchestrated meaning. You can say whatever you really want about like what other this or that it means, like, but it's going to have basis. I'm not even gonna call it the meaning, but it's like going to have a
foundation
basis.
already.
Exactly.
Someone else has found meaning in this same symbol, in this same piece of art.
Yeah, more than one person. We're talking like lines and lines and lines of people, like I said, doing the same thing differently in that tangent.
And I just wanted to touch back real quick about that whole sense of skepticism with the occult too. There's a great quote that I love from Ben Franklin, Freemason, known interest in the occult.
Electricity inventor.
Yeah, he discovered electricity or whatever, and also like he released the Farmer's Almanac, which is like high level.
That's all
astrology. Yeah,
Dang. Okay.
Ben Franklin, very curious dude.
Hundreds.
One of my favorite quotes from him is he said that if you ever encounter someone and they're just like super on it about like a conspiracy, he didn't use conspiracy theory, but like someone who's just like really talking your ear off about something that they fully believe to be true, it's like, don't waste your energy arguing with them. Listen to them and just say, you may be right, and move on.
It's a clean sweep.
An open mind.
I mean, that's as clever as like crane kick, not sweep the leg, crane kick, because honestly, it's more like whatever happens to you or that, like, you can actually have those conversations no matter how weird they go, especially religiously. This ironically ties back to Sunday, the Sunday I missed. Apparently, when I came back and people were like telling me, like how wild it was, the only thing that really rung in my head was like, does not seem to be a lot of open discussion or deeper foundational meaning through it. Maybe some people did, maybe some people didn't, but you would really have to like.
I want to think there's a lot of churches out there that do really touch on that deep, but I don't know. I've never really seen it that much.
There's some interesting churches that are kind of like embedded through upper areas, is like Seattle, like hole in the wall churches is what I call them, where they do not slip. I walked into one church, I think that was called the Aquarius Church or Age of Aquarius Church.
Oh, I bet that's trippy as hell.
Yeah,
I bet that's Saint Germain Temple, or is it something else?
Something else, I believe. Yeah, no.
Aquarius
Ascended
Church.
Master Saint Germain.
Yeah. Big up, shout out Saint Germain.
Shout out Saint Germain.
Did it have photos of a whole line of prophets?
I don't know. No, probably you were probably thinking of different places.
And honestly, there's a lot of beautiful spiritualism in this city.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird city, isn't it?
Yeah.
The city itself, honestly, we have nature, which, you kind of like are born into this like cognization. How are you not, in 2020, how are you not a skeptic of some shit?
Yeah,
to be very honest, at this stage of the game, in almost everything that there really is out there,
at least two sides.
Yeah.
And
does Donald Trump even have coronavirus? We don't know.
Does Donald Trump even exist, bro? Yeah. Is Donald Trump real? I've never met him.
I think we already hit it. Coronavirus, crown virus.
Oh yeah,
we're already
that symbolism. Words are symbols. Corona is Spanish for crown, Latin for crown.
Yep.
I mean, it's weird.
Already getting into deeper meanings, and see, they already tell you what to do, what is, and this and that. We think of imageries, and we're used to per se advertisements, and things of that nature are orchestrating, a literal symbol of what it means to go to McDonald's, go to Burger King. The subtleties that you find in the day-to-day people, you gotta kind of give your working man more credit, especially your working, deep thinking seer, who's gonna actually kind of give you a vision within the art, even if it's already been done, you're gonna actually be able to see through context the deeper meanings of what this piece even means.
Yeah, I
What
feel
the
like
whole
that's
thing
another
even
thing
means. It's
for me.
deeper than a McDonald's burger. You know what I mean?
For me, that's one of the things that defines like good art is like, can I revisit this and look at it and then get something else out of it, you know? But my first pass through, it's like I had an initial like, that's this. But then I looked at it again and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't notice. And it's like, and you know, it's hard to really pin down a lot of stuff about art because it's such a abstract thing. It's like,
Do you mean that about your own art as well as other people's art?
just other people's art. And I mean, I do my own art and I try and instill a sense of like depth to it where it's like, I've got this on my mind, but I also want to leave things open for interpretation and not like put a caption and say like, this is me because I'm sad. Like, you know, like there's lots of things about art that's just fully interpretive and not objective, you know? So it's really hard to talk about it a lot of the time.
Yeah, because remember, even over time, like if people really did have deeper meanings, it's not like necessarily like people would be just snap on and be aware and kind of like know about it or like really even have an understanding about it. Everything, literally, like the whole world's like awakening period was like teetering and leveling up. You would think even the highest knowledges of like some of the cult knowledge is still kept up, ironically, within the corona. So like how much would you even realistically be comfortable with? It's literally a phrase in the hood. What I don't know, I don't trust. You know, like, well, I mean, true, false, and everything. And we start there, and it really, the cookie just keeps crumbling. The symbols of both what is an actual symbol and symbols like Christians, because we're not bagging on just one religion or creed or idea or anything. Like, you know, as we can clearly see, this creator has it all. Literal symbols of creation. Then
Study
you
the
head to the
symbols
creator.
of the creator. We're going to go take a break and do just that. Back to the drip. Back to the topics. Back with Matt Valente and UV. Gonna ask Matt to break down the symbology of our collab painting, Portrait of an Amethyst Geode. So let's take it back all the way when we were collaborating on it. What vision did you have in mind for the painting?
So for the listeners at home who haven't seen the picture, it's going to be the photo of this podcast. Yeah. So it's like a pretty large painting in real life. It's like
3 by 3 square.
3 feet by 3 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty big. And how we started it was that Brenton did one of his like abstract acrylic water-based blending paintings over it and then gave it to me. And our original intent behind it was actually not to paint a geode at all, really. We were originally it was supposed to be like a fey winter court type.
It was painted on the solstice.
So when I got it, I was like, damn, this is such a big canvas.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of wanted to make the space in the middle look a little bit smaller. So when I started out on it, I was making this really just ornate framework. And when you look at the painting, most of the work of the painting itself is in that framework. It takes up most of the area of it, and it's really nice. It's like a lot of like filigree, which is like what you see on etching and stuff, where it kind of has that like Fibonacci golden curve, and then there's like flowers and plants, and I included a little bit of symbolism down there in that too, where there's like one side of it is the sun, and other side is the moon, which when you look at a lot of like masterwork paintings, there's like one pillar on one side of the subject is the sun, and one pillar on the other side of the subject is the moon, and that goes into like it goes into a lot of Freemason symbolism too, and like honestly, you just go deeper into the high priestess is like that. It's like everywhere once you notice it. So I wanted to make sure I included that in there, and then I had that nice open space in the middle. And I don't actually know when I decided to start making it a geode, But
You have this shattered up CD disc.
yeah, well, that's one of the more interesting details of the painting. Was so once I actually decided to make it a geo. Oh, I was like making crystals in my alchemy lab over on the table.
It was in a black marble.
Yeah, a mortar and pestle. I had like filled it with a bunch of like salt and chemicals and just crushed up crystals and stuff. I really wasn't following any recipe. I was just adding random shit.
I ended up actually getting to see like a few of like the little bubbles of things that you would be able to like put in like literally one dish. Like we're talking like, you know, you'd have like a few household items, like you know, like walk down the street, maybe, you know, I need some like little bits of silver, and you know, you'd like do a dance and a jig and like have like, you know, some essential oils in there, and then what was happening.
Yeah, this one had a weird artistic process, and then I remember one of the times it almost looked like the stuff was like breathing in and out, and I was like, that's weird, I don't know what's doing that. Yeah. But eventually I fished out a bunch of crystals from this like soup, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna glue them to the painting, and I'm like, oh, they're like, I don't know. And so we started adding more and more stuff to the actual canvas with like glue and resin and stuff like that. And while I was working on this, I want to divulge a little bit of information here about myself. I was diagnosed with a testicular problem. It was like a cyst, and it was causing me a lot of great pain. And as you know, great pain leads to a lot of great art. So I was working on it constantly during that, and eventually I had surgery to relieve me of that pain. And there was like a DVD of the process, and I never actually watched that DVD because I wasn't really that privy to watch someone operating on my testicles, and so I actually I destroyed that DVD and broke it up, and the actual physical remains of that DVD are glued into the geode portion of the geode portrait.
Oh man.
So there's a lot of symbolism there that would be hard to interpret for your just non-context looker there, but you can somewhat feel a lot of that energy still.
That's nuts.
Right?
That's nuts.
Get it?
And there's also
fuck you.
you're doing live painting on this painting for a lot of the nights. Tell us how that influenced the process.
So this is honestly the piece of work, the work of art that I've spent the most like physical time on, other than some of my sculpture, where like I've taken this out and then redone over and added depth and brightness. It's on like a podium, so I've done all the shading on that, and then painted over resin layers, re-added resin layers, and so taking all those vibes from like my musician friends who were performing while I was doing that on stage with them, that also takes a lot of that, and you can almost see it in the painting of when I was doing that. It's like you can almost see like the background is like moving into like the halo that's sort of surrounding it and fueling that energy while still kind of like projecting it out. And it's like that whole feedback of artists interacting with one another that really makes that painting kind of come to life. And then there's like a lot of other gemstones.
Yeah, I found a whole beaded bracelet with crystals of some kind on it at the Paramount, another place with a lot of energy, and I found it on the floor of the Paramount. And I just given that to Max. I was like, I don't know, the bracelet's falling apart.
Yeah, and
bad.
There was like maybe 20 stones in that.
At least.
And that probably only makes up about 5% of all of the stones that have been glued to this painting. So I have it currently hanging up in my living room at my house. I haven't even thought about selling it yet because it's really not finished. I've just been continuously working on it and really trying to make it exactly what I want it to be. But there's like glitter and rhinestones, and depending on the light, the way it hits it, it just sparkles and it just captivates all of my guests when they come over. And honestly, I think what really makes that an interesting painting is just how many layers there are to it. There's like the initial work that Brenton worked on, and then Brenton has gone back and also added more.
Yeah, a lot of the shading is mine, but I don't have the hands to do all of the fine filigree, so any of the finer details is all Matt.
Yeah, but so much of that energy is just like in that abstract color work that's behind everything. It's like hard for your eyes to really focus on any of it. And if you ever zoom in and get super close to it, it's like just random splatters of paint everywhere. It's really, I like it.
Can I offer my two
Yeah, what's
bits on
Kareem's?
this?
Because Kareem didn't work on the painting, so he's just an observer.
Yeah, I kind of realistically got in touch with the work of art is a better way I'd put it. like to call it a painting, to call it even a sculpture is like getting a little closer. This is a geode in the sense of it's not only what's depicted and how Matt drawn it placed on like a high priestess kind of like structured column.
Yeah.
2 columns, I believe, right?
There's one column in the middle, and then like the other 2 columns, so to speak, are like the frame of the painting.
Like it's already three-dimensional. Like you can see, like it sits on top of it. The whole painting is like an illustration because you guys mentioned like the farrier, like kind of like fayish aspects of like the background color.
Yeah, because that was the intent.
Yeah, so there's that in the background. So it literally looks like the geode is like placed there.
Yeah, the portrait of a literal geode from my apartment when we were living together. And we decided that it would be, there's a luck bot in a group chat that spits out luck to people. So it's a portrait of that geode who also represents, it's like a representation of a certain energy with even more energy currents in the background. So it's sort of like the experience of the geode itself if you really get deep into it.
Oh, yeah. And that's where my story kicks in. See, as this painting had as this work of art had developed, and you would say all of us with it because this man took it with him. This wasn't a painting that stayed at home. Like you'd say this geode was fairly mobile.
Yeah, it's been in at least 4 different houses, and it's been painted on in at least 2 different bars. So,
and with all of its contents that literally make it, let alone the art being 3-dimensional and the art itself like literally having a thickness to it. My experience comes from like whenever I was on like a certain energy or like seeing it from like literal different perspectives, like even from what I would be on or what the day would be like and whatnot, day and night, this thing would have something that literally kind of worked damn as or more powerful as the damn stone luck bot that it was even based off of in the damn house. It had a way of literally reflecting, absorbing energies, especially like in the center, because I just now found out that those CD bits, or I'm remembering again, were of that surgery. So it's nuts that thing has such a way with like managing energy and kind of like absorbing it and spreading it through like itself and making like a whole wall, like literal positive energy, because that thing emits like colors that like you practically invented.
Yeah,
at this point.
It's hard to exactly explain it. Definitely check out the image of it. And
yeah, it'll be the image of the podcast. So.
And if you really find yourself connected to it, it's eventually going to be for sale when it's completed. So.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you would rather see in person, because it's like
the GC art show coming soon.
We'll add a high res version of the painting. It'll be on the cover. But also we'll add a link to Imgur of a high-res photo of it. That way you can check out some of the better details.
Okay.
Thanks, Lando, bringing the lube as you.
Yeah, because I mean, we really just talked about like death symbols, like illustration intent, patterns of literal ancient knowledge and modern media, all combined, and it's a literal structure. All of this in one is like pretty much what you get, and it's kind of like the power play move, you know. It's worth fucking checking out. Plus, it's lucky. It's luck bot.
Plus, it's lucky.
Yeah, it's good luck.
All right, we'll be back with the hard-hitting questions.
I'm still paying for premium porn. $9.99 per month.
You pay $9.99 without a phone or laptop for premium porn. What's up? Back for round 3. Back for the hard-hitting questions with UV. All right.
Hit me.
These are a section of questions that cut deep.
Ironically, I'm gonna take the glasses off because you're the nerd around here. But I'm a really get busy.
I'm gonna leave mine on because I need them to see.
Except shout out Matt last Halloween when he went around for almost a month with no glasses. It was amazing and inspiring to all of us.
Claimed psychedelics straight cured his eyesight.
Yeah, try not to get hit in the face if you own glasses that you wear on your face.
Yep, that's big brain advice. Hit him with the first question.
Where do you find yourself most comfortable?
Most comfortable?
I promise you, you were a very comfortable dude. Funky. It's like life of the party doesn't always have to be the one yelling and screaming. Life of the party is probably just the one like just looking like every time you see him, the man is having a good time.
Yeah.
What makes a comfortable setting for you? Party or chill?
So I haven't necessarily lived the most comfortable life, so I never really strive to try and get a lot of comfort. I enjoy it when it's there, but I would never say seeking comfort's my goal. But for me, I'm most comfortable in my classroom. I teach 4 and 5-year-olds, and they're just, I love coming in there. It's like even when there's like crazy shit happening in the news and I feel really like tore up about stuff, it's like I go in there and they're not concerned about that. They want to know if like gorillas make milk or if sharks make milk. And it's like, it's like, it just keeps you on your toes. And it's like, for me, I'm comfortable in that environment where they're just like, they want to know the answers to lots of stupid little questions and I've got them. And it's just like, it makes me feel like I've got kind of like a purpose in that regard. And I don't know, it's nice. It makes me forget about like the real world, so to speak, even though it almost feels like more of a real world.
During that specific occasion, you would almost say, because I know you invited like a few of your like teacher colleagues, like just a small few of them, like one that could like really handle the responsibilities in and out the classroom, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So realistically, for a man that does not seek comfort, yet knows what to do with it, my second tidbit question, I got the hard-hitting one after, is like, what about other things that you're involved with make you comfort? Now, you said your classroom, but we're talking like in the classroom, is it more the place of your classroom or is it a classroom in general? Is it a place where you can spread your knowledge or a place where you naturally receive knowledge?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, I think it's got to be my classroom right now, at least. It's like, it's that place where, I don't know, it feels like I'm more in control of things. That feeling of not being in control of stuff leads to a lot of discomfort for a lot of people, myself included. So, like, when I'm in a room and I'm, like, the only grown-up, so to speak, and I've got, like, my lesson plan that I did last week, and I know exactly what we're going to do, and there's a lot of repetition, and there's a lot of, like it just like it gets rid of a lot of that like unknown danger. Like I've got like a lot of like anxiety in general, and so just going into like that environment where like there's unexpected things that might happen, but they're all super handleable and like
It's at least a straight like guideline.
Yeah, it's just like
curriculum even.
I think that it's something to be said that like a preschool classroom should feel really safe. And so because my preschool classroom feels really safe, I feel really safe when I'm there. So I feel comfortable.
Yeah, it's like you kind of balance making like a sacred space and just, like how you would even like spread your knowledge, and like I'm even gonna add like at the party, remember, like you're not sitting here like necessarily being silent, man. Like you have like more of a freedom there, like less of a filter, but for males, go so hard. You kept it within your bounds. That's the no party fouls that I could speak of. And
yeah, I like to try and be respectful of other people. I'm not trying to go out and make other people not have a good time. Like who does that? It's like I'm just trying to like just enjoy myself and make sure I'm not like harshing anyone else's vibes either. And I think other people respect that.
Now, I got the hard-hitting one for you. As you had just mentioned, like hurting other people or getting like through other people's vibes, like who does that? And we see that your outlets like are clearly versatile in the fact that you have many different ways that you express yourself, but through all the things that you express yourself with, how do you hold your sacred space? So, I'm a pretty spiritual person these days. I wasn't always a really spiritual person, but lately I've definitely tapped into that kind of that nature. So like my living space, I consider it a really sacred space, but not like
It doesn't look like a church when you walk in there. Like I don't have like painted glass or like big candles burning.
That'd be nice though.
It would be a look for sure. But for my sacred space, I've got lots of plants. I take care of a whole bunch of baby plants and grown up plants, and like I get to know them and love them, and like that energy is there. And then I like to collect rocks and stones and just aspects of nature.
Shout out Freckles. Beast of
Yeah,
nature.
me and Brenton's cat, Freckles. Shout out Freckles. She reminds me of all the cool things about nature too. I love to collect mushrooms from the forest and set them up. Lots of sculptures and artwork. A lot of it's mine, but I don't know. Just things that make you feel comfortable. It's hard to explain.
You know, the follow-up was that connected first question was like, how does this reflect into your art? But clearly, knowing you and seeing your art, like, you get a depiction, and, you know, art is very interpretable, but a person is a person. You can interpret that however which way. That's going to be a continuous project. Would I be wrong to say that your art, you reflect in your art just as well as any of the things that you can realistically put in it at this point?
Yeah, my art's definitely a reflection of myself. Like I mentioned earlier that like when I do art, a lot of times I have like a kind of clear head space and like I don't necessarily think about it while I'm doing it. But everything that comes out onto the paper or the canvas or whatever the art's on, that's a reflection of myself in some regard. It's something that's in me that needs to get out. Even if I don't understand it fully, it's something that I need other people to see.
You know, we had mentioned earlier the Valente classics. You know, don't knock until you try and interpret openly, you know, just as anything you realistically would see. And, you know, I find you, you know, naturally symbolically powerful in nature. You know? Prominent. Shit. Girls probably on you because you fuck just like Pan. Shit. These
Pan.
Who knows? We're into the second question. We're feeling a little thick, but we got a lot of sauce here. Let's start with tools, for example. What are your preferred tools when you do art?
So, especially when I do live painting, I like to bring... I've got this little art box that folds open, and I keep all my... I do acrylic paint for my live paint. I've painted in oil. For those of you who've tried to paint in oil before, you know it takes a really long time to dry.
That's hella long.
It's like a curing process instead of a drying process. So you have to like let it sit there for like a month or two. And that doesn't really lend itself super well to painting live. So I bring my acrylic paints. I've got this old palette. Every painting I've done as an adult, I've used the same palette for, actually. And I've done a shitload of paintings. I've done probably 60 plus paintings with this palette, and it weighs like 3 pounds now. I've never cleaned it off.
Straight paint, resin. Like if you had a bong and you've been like, you know, just like it's been the same weed, so I haven't need to change it.
The other day when I was working on Ghost's album cover, it cracked a little bit, but I fixed it with some modeling clay, and so I love that thing. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it one day. If I become a famous artist, maybe it'll be in a museum or something. But then I've got a bunch of brushes. I've got little brushes. Those are cool. My favorite ones to use, I like to use makeup brushes on my artwork actually, because there's just they've got like a nice fine bristle to them. And as long as you clean them well, you just can get like a lot of paint on them and get that really nice clean lines.
And for a paintbrush, honestly, if you're making clean lines and like the stroke you need it's piecing it together, you know, like a truest inscription.
And then I like acrylic paint sticks. They're almost like big crayons for adults, but they're made of acrylic paint. And then you can just like write on stuff like it's like
fucking anything.
Yeah, you can write on anything with those things, or like paint markers. It's like I'm very diverse in the number of different mediums that I like to use. I don't like to just stick with one specific like watercolor, and it's just like I almost never do that. I usually switch back and forth between a bunch of different stuff. I think it has a cool effect. Maybe not as uniform as like a book illustration or like a cartoon, but it's definitely something.
And you still do etchings. You still find yourself with a pencil or a
pen. I sketch from time to time. Like I said, I'm doing the Inktober thing again this year where you just do an ink drawing every day. And for that, I'm doing it all in pen. But that's how I learned how to draw, was my parents would just sit me down with a stack of white printer paper and a ballpoint pen and say, leave us alone. And then I'd just sit there for hours and hours and just doodle. And so when I go back, it's like a ballpoint pen and some blank white paper. That's my like stomping grounds. Like I could do a lot of cool stuff with that still. They say that you become a master at something after doing it for 10,000 hours. And like, I don't want to like just toot my own horn, but I've definitely done 10,000 hours of doing art in my life. That's like, there's no way. It's like probably the single thing I've done the most time doing. So I've got a sense of mastery of it where like I don't really think about when I do art. I can just look at something and then my brain makes the image. I feel like almost like a HP printer, but for different, like it's not an exact replica of it because that's boring to me. I could sit there for like an hour and a half and look at something and get like a nice exact representation of what it is, but that, who cares? It's like that's not what I'm trying to get across in my art. It's like you could sit there and write 50 pages describing exactly what a bowl of fruit looks like, or you could write a poem in 10 lines that tells you what a bowl of fruit feels like. And so it's like finding that happy medium between the two.
Because that's a very illustrative point, because if you can make a creation of a creation, there you go with that young God aspect. And this is kind of going to bleed over to question 3 as it will to question 4, where it's like, where do you find faith in your process? Because we had talked tools, right?
Yeah.
And we talked comfort a bit. Place. Like comfort, place, sacred space, and like where you find yourself in it. So I find like if we're connecting over to like a foundation, you told us how you started.
Yeah.
Now, let's get even back to the fact that you teach children. You have many different expressions that you have like picked up naturally through your becoming. Well, now, where does your current environment kind of lead you to that? Like where, with such base and you say mastery, does that come in when you teach pretty much like the youngest grade you can teach?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think kids really learn super well through art. There's something about them watching you take a tool, create an image, and then tell them things about that image and what they represent. And like at the end of the day, that's what all of this occult symbolism is, and like how we were talking about all that earlier, is that it's looking at something that isn't that image. Like that's not a cow. A kid knows that's not a cow, but they'll look at it and they know that it is a cow.
Yeah, and they're really good at doing that if you really think about it. Like
and so with my like level of artistic mastery, it's kind of cool because the kids will be like, well, what is this thing that you keep, what is a dinosaur even? Like, what do they look like? What is a humpback whale? I don't know what a whale is. What does that look like? And so it's just like that ability to be like, it looks like this. It's like, it's convenient in a lot of ways, and I think it helps me out in that situation. But I kind of want to you mentioned something that I thought sounded interesting earlier about faith in my process, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, it was gonna kind of tie over into that like little kind of religious-y bit, Like, because we had tied over to, like, your tools and foundation. So it was going to kind of bleed in there anyway. Glad you remembered.
No, yeah, but I feel like since one of my favorite ways to do art is how I do art with you guys, which is where we go out on the stage and you guys are performing and then I'm there on stage with a canvas and my tools and everyone is watching me do my art. And that's one of those situations where I need to have a lot of faith in my process, you know? Because it's just like, people paid to come out tonight to see this and listen to this, and it's like, you have to go out there and do something worth. So it's like, you really have to be like, I am a good artist. I'm going to go out there and I'm not going to fuck up, but it's a live performance. So
there's faith right there, yeah. That's a performance.
You find it's more the product of the painting differs when it's a live show or it's one of your ones at home, or they still have that same core?
It's definitely different. And in my opinion, it's a lot better. We just started doing these live paintings, I think, last year.
Yeah.
Or maybe the year before that. But it hasn't been that long. But with coronavirus, I've honestly been missing it a lot. It's a super fun aspect to add to the art, that like doing it and the process is part of it. And then the finished product is kind of whatever. Like, I've sold a lot of the finished products, but I almost don't necessarily need them up in my... That was much less about me doing art for me and me doing art based on the vibes, I guess.
So, yeah, it's more of putting on a show rather than what you personally want to expect. You're like, okay, people will like this, and you'll still include that part of your own stuff into it, but you're painting for the crowd. You're not painting for yourself.
I enjoy it, but I'm not... The painting's not for me.
Yeah.
The painting is what I think the people will want to see and enjoy seeing, or what goes well with the music, or...
Yeah.
So it's like you're giving a classic performance piece versus at home, like...
Yeah, like the art I do
classic.
at home, sometimes I've got like a handful of paintings at home that I've never even put on Instagram. And I think a lot of that is I'm a perfectionist at home. It's like I'll do like 3 layers on it, and where most people would say, oh, that's done. I'm like, no, I'm just going to hang it up on the wall for 5 months and then do some touch-up work later. But it's not ready to be shown yet. But when you do something live, I plan to have that painting finished by the time the performance is over. It's different. I don't know.
That's the key.
It's jazz.
Yeah, it's jazz.
It's the strokes you don't make.
Yeah.
Good.
I meant actually more about the improvisation part. You know, like, you're in the moment. You're on stage. Whatever comes out, comes out.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's just like, with jazz, if you play the wrong note, it's not usually the wrong note because it's jazz. It's like... I don't know.
I mean, you have to have like a muscle memory and like a lot of like licks and like
that mastery of it, where you're not actually like consciously thinking about playing. Mm-hmm. You're like just your brain. You're just saying play jazz to your brain, and your brain is making all the moves for you.
I guess the analogy is using the alphabet and to language. Like we're not like thinking about the alphabet and every letter.
Yeah, I'm not going like, okay, Lando, Lando, and it's like, yeah.
Lube.
We're fluent. A jazz musician is fluent in jazz. Yeah. And I'm more fluent with the paint, where I don't have to think about what color. I just like squirt it on the thing. And then we need to put that color there. And it's just like a process.
Yeah, that ability to just get started and just stay in the flow of it is the core of any artistic process. Like, whether that's my painting or writing, it's just like get in the process and then just act and really clear your mind and just do stuff, and then keep doing that. You just finish whatever.
Mm-hmm. I find I fuck up paintings a lot of the time when I go back not in that vibe and try and edit too. Yeah. It's like I don't tap into that same vibe I was feeling when I created it the first time.
Yeah, I feel that. Like my watercolors, it's like if I do even one stroke too many, it ruins the whole painting. And if I do like, there was one, it's like I had this moment where I was like, all right, I'm gonna add that. I added probably like double the work just because I was trying to correct that one stroke. So for my work, it's always like, how little can you go and do while still keeping that core idea, because anymore you're more likely to fuck it up. So
it's like jazz.
Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna mention that you yourself said that replicating the same thing would be boring. Even you can, but your process kind of leads you to.
Yeah, I try not to fight against the artistic current. Sometimes, like, I get paid to do art a lot of the time, and sometimes that's some. I know one of the few. It's the big bucks. Let me tell you, but when I do commissioned pieces, a lot of the times that's some of the least fun work that I do, and I can't exactly explain why. Like, for one thing, it doesn't always feel like work because, like I said, I've got that kind of fluency in it where, like, someone tells me what they want to make. Like, I did that for the Army for 8 years. They said, "Dude, this is the exact thing that we want you to make." And I go, "Okay." And then I made the exact
thing. So you already done that realistically. You literally got hours in that.
Yeah, but it's
good
like,
ones.
It's like when someone else tells me to do art, it's like that, and especially if they're like, "And we'll give you money," then that goes to the front of my priorities, and it's like I can't. It's like fighting against the current of what my subconscious wants to put out as art.
This is ironically going to lead into our sixth discussion. Hard hitting, because this man hits hard.
Yep.
Clearly, I mean,
I can attest to that.
Do not become decadent, my friend. Do not become addicted to food.
The thickness.
Matt Valente, classic advice right there.
Do not become addicted to soft bed.
I've seen Matt eat no food and sleep on the world's most uncomfortable bed.
That bed sucked.
It drove people away.
It drove people insane.
You can say.
What do you get when you sleep on that uncomfortable of a bed for so long?
Girls who say it feels like sleeping in a tent.
Trust me, I know about that. I say we got two more. And one of them, we're going to talk for a few minutes, take a small break. You get to pick. The next one's on mine. And we'll see if you hard-hitting Matt Valente can really knock these out the park. Left and right. Duality.
I get
right?
to ask myself my own question.
The own hard-hitting question?
Pretty much.
What's the hard-hitting question you want to ask Matt Valente?
Oh, man.
Matt Valente has to ask Matt Valente.
That is a hard-hitting question.
Oh, Matt Valente has to ask Matt Valente. I mean...
Who the fuck do you think you are?
Hey man, what's going on in that big head of yours? Like we're illustrations on the outside.
Let's make that the hard. What's going on inside that big head of yours?
What's going on inside that should be the hard hitting question first, right off the bat, every new episode. What's going on in that big head of yours, boy?
But hey, I can't ask it like any sort of way. People get too carried away. They might just give me the details of what's going on in that big head of theirs. That moment, yeah, I'm not gonna range what is going on, but that depth of what's really gonna hit a hard hitting question like that is the fact that it's not necessarily what is going on, it's already going on. You have to illustrate it kind of like an improv play. The exact feeling. It's the emotion that you put into what's going on is practically as deep as me asking, how are you feeling based on the things
I got the hard-hitting question for myself.
Yeah.
Matt Valente, what do you know about the Temple of Solomon? What do you really know?
What do you really know?
That's
a good one. Matt Valente, what do you really know?
What do you really know about the Temple of Solomon?
Because as we would base, we're actually getting back into faith, and that was the last one. I had a point where, as I said, I was in jail and I saw that Christian cross, right? Solomon being in the Bible is wise. Definitely thought about him, was just sitting there really thinking of building your own foundation, and having really both the left and right side of thinking, let alone a kind of divine course of interacting with each element that kind of breaks down to you and having a wisdom more than knowledge, a wisdom based on the things that you've already done. That through you is the fact that like you already literally said you're a master. You literally put in the 10,000 hours. You said not to toot your own horn, you know, like it.
So I want to know what do you know about the Temple of Solomon? I thought that was
What do you? if you're gonna if you're gonna apologize for
tell the
tooting your own
listeners
horn,
what they need to know.
and you're gonna mention the Temple of Solomon, put them onto some wisdom, not knowledge.
For
put them
those
onto
of
some
you
wisdom.
who don't know anything about the temple, King Solomon was the king of the Jewish people in Israel.
That's facts.
Yeah, some call him the greatest king of the Jewish people of Israel, but he created a place to house the Ark of the Covenant, which there, like I said, there's a lot of occult things in the Bible. This whole story is just dripping with additional information not included that isn't symbolic. And so they put the Ark of the Covenant in this temple, and the temple itself, the construction of it, the people involved in the planning, the materials made with it, the dimensions of it, the person who made it.
Sounds like an art piece.
Yeah, I mean, like, all buildings are technically an art piece. I mean, like, even shitty buildings are shitty art pieces, you know?
But there's only one dude in the Bible beyond, like, building an ark to, like, literally get some, you know, some things from point A to point B during that time that really was like, you know what?
Yeah.
You know, so inspired by God, you know, in the religious section of Christianity and a few other places that build a temple.
Yeah, but...
I think, he was before David?
he was David's son.
I know, so David was before.
Yeah.
So, we're talking, You can say, actually, in a sense, if we were to build back from David, because David was, the initial king of the Jews?
I don't know.
It goes further back. Dynasty. But
You got Moses, you got, like... they probably had a king before they were enslaved. I don't actually know the exact timeline of the Jews.
Jews and old people.
And anybody who claims to know the exact timeline of the Jews probably doesn't actually.
It's honestly,
Therefore, I know the timeline of the Jews.
Yeah, but what I do know is that they've kept that story of King Solomon in the Bible for a reason. They've told that story for like 6,000 years or some shit like that.
Really long time.
And the details about it are very specific, and they're there for a reason. And I'm not going to necessarily go into all of the things that I've learned about that, but I just think it's a fun question to ask people because it's such a deep, like, treasure trove of ideas and symbols that like 99% of the population has never heard of.
let alone
why is there a replica of it in Brazil?
Yeah,
That's
why
a whole
is there a
other question.
replica of it in Washington, D.C.?
Yep.
Why is there a replica of it carved out of a single piece of stone plus the entire old city of Jerusalem in Ethiopia?
Yeah.
And that's true. That's not, like, you can go there and look at it. I mean, like, there's a lot of things deeper in human history than what we get taught as history in our schools.
Yep.
And art is a really interesting way to do that because you can censor words and you can burn books, but it's hard to censor something if you don't realize that those symbols are telling something other than what's on the surface.
Well, there we go again with the occultistic nature of things.
Yeah.
And the fact that, like, when we even base such a timeline on the fact that we have one prominence of, like, a wealth of, like, understanding and knowledge, and then another one who is literally depicted as wise. Wisdom is that, you know, that base beyond knowledge, you know, where you could say the hours are, like, necessary and or part of the process, you know, like, man, we even talk about the things under the surface, man. The straight detail of the being is just kind of like, you damn near say occult to even really kind of get the depth upon. Like, think about the question. Think about how, like, wild and precise it already stands. You asked yourself, what do you know about the Temple of Solomon? Clearly, you have a base understanding.
I technically don't know anything about the Temple of Solomon.
Yeah.
All I really know is that there's a biblical story about it and that lots of people say lots of things about it.
All right.
But like Ben Franklin said, you may be right? keep an open mind.
So break down what made you investigate the Temple of Solomon. Was it that weird medallion you bought from Edge of the Circle, or was there an interest in it before that?
So I did buy a weird medallion from the local magic shop called Edge of the Circle, and that had a strange geometric shape on it and a bunch of words in Hebrew, and I was like, I don't know what this is. But the main reason that I got that was because, and I'm going to divulge a little bit information about myself again, I was admitted to a mental hospital for a short period of time following a bunch of anxiety attacks, and while I was there, I was prescribed a pretty high dose of Prozac. And while I was on Prozac, I received a lot of downloads of biblical knowledge that I had never read before in the Bible, and I didn't know about these things. But basically, I received like the story of King Solomon in my brain, and I was like, well, that's weird. And so I wanted to learn more information about that specifically, and that's what started me down like a really deep rabbit hole into the nature of symbolism in human history.
Yeah.
I mean, believe it if you will. I don't know.
I was there. It all happened more or less like that. You know, though obviously I cannot peek inside Matt's brain, nor was I aware of his biblical knowledge. But you know, it did happen more or less like that.
Apparently, what's going on in that big head of yours is a lot of teaching and knowledge, wisdom, you would say.
Gnosis.
Essentially. I mean, there's Solomonic magic, and that's honestly very, what I like to call meta culture, based on the understandings of like what occultic symbols and practices have literally been passed down that have honestly kind of been more like culture stamped, like a truest understanding, but the depth of it is still kind of like yet to really pop out and reawaken. So these things we don't even necessarily consider under the surface, in a sense of we're in a modern day where like the Renaissance includes like Solomonic
age of information now.
Yeah, we just hit
The
it.
secrets are out on the internet for you to find.
It's public information now. A lot of these occult things have been revealed, and there's no penalties for a lot of these things. It's not against the law to talk about how the stars weren't put there by Jesus himself. You know, it's like and there's still penalties for some of the stuff these occultists were hiding. They were hiding some activities that are still illegal today.
Yep.
And they were doing, some of these occultists were doing weird things. Like, there's been people busted in satanic cults for running child sex rings, and there's been people who have been practicing blood magic on their partners and cutting off fingers and stuff like that. Like, there's lots of weird stuff that goes on that that still gets hidden. But the majority of this stuff was being hidden despite being benevolent, and now that there's no consequences for that, it's not as hard to find anymore. You just gotta know where to look.
What was the person that was cooking up all the medicine doing in their spare time when they didn't need any physical medicine anymore, you know?
Yeah, and my biggest thing is like to realistically like open the topic of truest healing. I always believe that you really gotta talk or address things first or make things open and available before like a truest understanding, let alone a wisdom, can be developed. Like it's going to have to take a delving process some way or the other, like into the literal knowledge, let alone understanding, let alone wisdom of like the things that already exist within the culture that surrounds you.
Because it's cool that the more you dig into occultism and what has been hidden, a lot of this information is stuff that's literally been around since we've been recording information that's been getting hidden. It's like stuff that Egyptians were doing and stuff that ancient Jews were doing. And like, I feel like it's important for us to kind of reconnect with that spiritual knowledge that humans have always known.
It's patternistic in nature. Seems to be patternistic in human behavior and nature within that course.
Yeah. Get back to our roots, you know? Stop hiding what we've always known.
What can always like become based on the fact of what we are as a being is very like inclusive, not exclusive. So I feel like the hours like with wisdom, we're gonna kind of like really pitch it in with like this seventh question being like, with the process of like how you do your art, both in life and as art itself, where do you see yourself going? What does the future look like for is it you said you don't do exact replicas, so like even if you wanted to like build this thing, like it's just not going to be like the same damn thing. Like whatever you want to build is not gonna be realistically a copy. You told me you just ain't that type of person. So where do you see yourself in the future and what you will build for yourself?
So for me, like I've been saying over and over in this podcast, I've been doing art my entire life. When I was a kid, I was just drawing on blank paper. When I was in school, I was studying art at like a museum, and I'm a classically trained artist. And so it's something that I just do. I don't really have any plans for, like, I have a plan for what I'm going to draw tomorrow, but it's not something that I'm trying to really commercialize. Like I said, I kind of hate it when people pay me for my art because it distracts me from just doing it. And so I'm just going to keep doing what I keep doing, and the more I work at it, the better I get at it, and who knows, maybe one day people will be like, damn, that dude was really good at art, like in 1,000 years. But if they don't, I also don't care.
I kind of added the final little bit is how do the symbols of what you see or what you take in affecting what you put out? I mean, your environment, you're around children, you don't like comfort, you seek to actually go forward through challenges, when things are darker, mucky, like you seem to literally be kind of like Robin. So what is it that kind of pushes you forward? What inspires you when you just do it? What's out there that really keeps you going?
For me, I think you were saying specifically about the symbols in it?
Yeah, I feel those symbols being the ground base of a lot of things that you see. Like, your art is a symbol. Robin,
yeah,
Flash is a symbol. Like you see that symbol, you know what's up. Something's needed. You when your kids need something, you're dealing with the youngest grade. You're there for them. You're trusted. You have a process. You're very you attention to detail. What symbols point out for you? What does it?
For me, I think it's got to be the spiral is the most important symbol, because people think that life is like a straight line, or maybe life is like a circle. But really, I feel like you just keep repassing the same things over and over and over again, and just viewing them a little bit different and a little bit deeper. And it just kind of keeps going.
We'll end it with that, folks.
Nice.
Think about the spiral, my homie, my bro, my amigo, my ex-roommate, Matt Valente.
Good job,
has been in the house. Woo. You can find it at Instagram.com/Pantostado1066. It's been the Underground, episode 3. Yeah. Shout out our listeners and all the people that put on the podcast. See you next time.